and we didn't have any problems, but I know some people who have as far as structurally, the way they go about assisting you as opposed to being rude about it, you know, okay. And I know we've had some changes in this township as far as positions. But my concern is, where is this township going with this new hirees? In my opinion, we have a problem. We need to make sure we don't repeat things again. This is what we have run into. We are putting a new roof on our house. Came from Simba, got the permit, paid the money. We're going along, hair outs. In comes the, well, I'm sitting in my living room. Cop knock on the door, bam, 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 and I'm like, what's going on? I open my door, and I have a man standing there with no form of identification, screaming at me, you got a building permit? That's just how it was. And I went, because no further than from me, that window hung my building permit. Also, very visible from Riverview Drive. Then he goes, saw your lunatic brother 2 weeks ago. And I just looking at him. And bear in mind, I have known this man since the 1970s as a sheriff deputy, total appropriate treatment. Bought a used car from his lot, appropriate treatment. That was my first contact with him. Township ordinance officer. Obviously, he felt very empowered. So he left, no apology, no, well, I screwed up, whatever. We had friends helping us. I go out, friends are, what's wrong with him? He came out, there was wood on the step to our house. He's yelling at them. They said, well, move it. Isn't there another door I can get in this house? These are the friends' comments. What's wrong with him? Why is he so angry at you? He really wanted to fight you. What I find interesting is 4/10 of a mile from my house, the next farmhouse, work is going on there with absolutely no building permits. The only way to come to my house that way is to drive past that house, to and fro. When the Simba officer came to approve our underlayment, he says, I see they don't have a building permit, and he took action. So, I was targeted. I think the reason for targeting was because I came here with a brother-in-law who had also had a problem. That's the only reason I can come up with. Brother-in-law was driving down the road, his road. A different enforcement officers coming the other way, sees him, turns around quickly. Brother-in-law's in his driveway, the ordinance officer almost rammed his vehicle. Served by many neighbors. Brother-in-law says, what's wrong with you? You almost rammed me. Well, I was a deputy for for 30 plus years. Good habits are hard to break. The next one was ordinance officer behind my brother-in-law's barn, taking pictures. He was wondering why. He comes and asks, why are you there taking pictures? And he's working with Simba. He's in compliance with them. He said, I wasn't there yesterday. I didn't work. Total lie. He was there. Pictures are on the computer. So, here's what I'm saying, is that we really need to look at what we're doing, who we hire, and what their background is. Can they make the transition from one career to another? But also the reason I'm here now, well, like I say, your newsletter prompted it. But then, we have a farm driveway, U-shaped, about 150 feet apart, frequently. In one end, out the other. Then he would go down, and my husband's brother lives a quarter-mile away. Drive down the side street, normal speed, all the neighbors knew this. Go 10 miles an hour as he goes slowly past the house several times a week. It's just harassment. I'm real disappointed in this township that this has happened. And when I look at this, I look at unprofessional conduct, targeting township residents, harassment, intimidation. We're being treated like criminals out there. Matter of fact, we called the previous two ordinance officers, the Cougar Gestapo is their nickname out there. They trespass, they display stalking behaviors, they lie, reckless driving at the least, maybe even up to the point of road rage, and insulting family members. So, the other thing I want the township to think about is, if these guys have so much time to do all this stuff to us, do we really need somebody to cover that many hours? As I've lived in this township, known many ordinance officers, not a problem. But I do have, if somebody from the board wants to get with me later, whatever, I do have pictures of another incident, which I didn't think my 3 or 4 minutes were a lot. So I just want you guys to know that I hope we can go forward and have people who treat us with respect instead of criminals.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Yes. Anyone else like to address the board?
I do. Have you heard anything about the speed limit?
Just a minute.
Oh, I'm sorry. Almost ran into you that way.
My name is Bill Kuska, and I'm Wilma's husband, and I want to speak about the same instance. I've been a resident for 73 years. 5 generations of my family lived in Cooper Township. And that day in question, I was about 4 rooms away, and I hear this loud noise, not sure what it is, and then I hear the yelling, and so I grabbed a ball bat, because I didn't know what was going on. And I run out there, and he's standing on the porch with my wife, and this guy, I don't know who he is, and he's got no identification, and then he didn't introduce himself, Wilma introduced him to me. He's talking about her brother, you know, how he's a lunatic, and wants to know where the building permit is, and I mean, the building permit is like right there. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And he just, like I say, he was out like he was on a vengeance trip or something.
And those days are gone.
Pardon?
Those days are gone, and they will stay gone.
Okay, thank you.
And Shirley, I have not heard anything back from the sheriff that was here the other day.
I thought he might be here tonight, and you know what we failed to mention? What have we got, about a half a mile? What's the avenue on that side?
Actually, pretty close to, well, you're probably right, somewhere between a mile and a half mile.
I think it's about
Sure. But we'll keep following the plan.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, hearing none. We have item number 7. I know we're not there yet, but that is Tom Wheat to discuss a small sewer project that we talked about last month that we had to have some information on you. He may not be able to make this meeting tonight because he is at a prayer meeting in Texas that is going longer. He's called me, so we may either have to postpone it a month or have a special quick meeting, so one of the two. So just in case, I'm gonna leave him till the end, and if he shows up, we'll discuss it. If not, then we'll do it at a later date, so. Fire department reports. Terry, I've got your report here. Do you have anything to add, or?
No, sir.
How's the progress on the boat?
It's coming along, and the axles to get in, and as far as I know, they're starting to build already, so.
Oh, very good. Okay. Good.
Terry, has there been any more water rescues?
Not like, knock on wood.
Yeah,
It was busy this last weekend, and the place was packed down there.
So you had,
It's nice that the river's down right now, so it's not, still fast, but it's down.
right. Seems like I heard something from somebody else that had, Charleston maybe, or somebody had a rescue that was
Charleston had a couple.
pretty up late with that. you know my feelings on that, the board knows, there was 2 people that died in Beetle Lake, they left their house on kayaks at 10 o'clock at night, which is illegal, because they don't have any lights on, I'm sure, and, maybe have not been drinking and both drowned. So obviously, these people, I'm more afraid for our fire rescue, because I don't want them to be the rescuee. So thanks for keeping me informed.
Do you have a question?
Same question.
Okay.
Water, yeah.
Any other questions from our board members for the chief? Hearing none, motion to accept this report for information. So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported, all in favor signify with aye. Aye.
Aye.
Nays, nay. Motion carries. We'll move to item number 8. We have a request from Cynthia Newmeyer regarding West Cooper Cemetery, and I will turn it over to you, Ms. Clark.
You have a packet before you, Cynthia is here,
Yes.
and if you had anything else you wanted to add to that, so you had mentioned in your letter to the board? They've read your, they've had your.
I wanted to know that the board, I'm Cynthia Newmeyer.
Yes.
I'm representing my mother, Charlene Bailey, 93 years old. Her family is all buried in Cooper Township, going back to Albert and Cleo Johnson. What I want to do is to maximize her spot. There were 6 plots, for her to be buried beside my father. And there have been some complications, and this has been pursued for a long time to clear. And I just want to come here to finalize that and to be sure that there isn't a problem in the proposal that was made in the letter that I sent. That's why I'm here.
Okay. I guess that at this point in the meeting, I ask any of your family that's here if they have anything like to add, because once we go to deliberate, then it'll be just between the boards, so I want to give you folks ample time if there's anything else that you'd like to say.
Well, do you have any questions from the letter that was submitted to you on the 28th of June? Did you all get that? Did you all get that? Okay, okay.
Well, I know that this has been a long time talking. I know Bonnie is also, back when Bonnie was in, we thought we had a resolution that, for cremation, and I understand that when it was your father that passed, that
Correct.
He decided he didn't want to be cremated, and or the family decided.
No, that was his decision.
His decision, okay.
And as is my mother's, we followed their wishes.
Right, and due to the fact that the length of times that those vaults have been in the cemetery with those trees that are growing that are impossible to excavate without disturbing greatly the other graves. I've looked at it, I've even spoken with Rob Stafford, our grave digger, along with Deanna. I don't see any other option than to put her where we said we could put her.
Well, as you can see from, there was a diagram, did you see that?
I did, but
And there aren't any vaults until you get to probably to, and there's no record, which is what makes it difficult. The things that are the obstacles, if you want to call them, are not vaults per se, but probably roots. And-
actually it's both, because the vaults have been turned almost 90 degrees, and they have rotted those vaults and checked exactly, where they are. I don't know if he actually put on a record, but I know that Bonnie had it done, and it would be impossible without exhuming 4 graves and removing the tree. I don't see how we can accommodate you.
What I'm trying to say is that the vaults are for my grandparents, probably, that they were vaulted. That sounds like a gymnastic event.
No, I know, I
But what
understand.
I am saying is that
Things were a lot
Charlotte,
different back then.
but
yeah.
Charlotte, who was 9 years old when she died, and Bruce, when he was stillborn, neither of them had a vault, to be sure.
Right.
And so there's all that distance from my father, that there's no vault until you get all the way over to my grandparents, which is 2 graves away from my father.
Well,
Actually, 3.
But it's
3.
It's graves that have been used, it's two, because you have the infant
Correct.
the 10-year-old, and then
Correct.
your grandparents.
Correct.
And the one where your dad went in was left of the infant Bruce, right?
With a space such that,
No space.
There's no space. That was the next available grave, was the one right next to your family's lot.
Larry, would you please address this?
I'm representing Larry Meyer. We went out
You need
and
to-
did some measurements, and you can see them there. It's hard to, well, let me put it this way. If there are no vaults for Bruce Johnson and Charlotte Johnson, then
Do you have the pictures in front of you, the diagrams? Do you have the actual diagrams there?
if you look at the Albert and Cleo Johnson grave,
No.
She
No.
has some in her packet.
You need to look at the one, Larry, you need to get up there, they don't.
This one?
Make sure we're.
no,
No, that's the, Carol's got it.
Carol has it, yeah.
Carol,
That-
oh,
It's further
okay.
back in your stuff. There you
what
go.
we did, what we did was measure, we simply started at the center of the headstone of Albert and Cleo Johnson. And we understand that a grave site is 3 foot 10 inches wide or 46 inches wide. So we measured south, the center of the headstone of Albert and Cleo Johnson. And that gave us one grave site, 46 inches. Then we measured north from that same point, that is the center of the headstone, 46 inches. Now, we did that based on the very reasonable assumption that that headstone, being the first one there and covering both of those people, would be at the dividing line between, centered on the dividing line between the two graves. And that gave us the fact that their grave is 56 inches from the road that was put in there, and then it extends about 92 inches from that point. And that's where you get to Charlotte Johnson, Bruce Johnson, and Bob Bailey. And the total distance there is the equivalent of nearly 4 grave sites. That is, from the northern edge of the Al and Cleo Johnson grave site to the northern edge of Bob Bailey's grave site.
Well, and Bob Bailey is not in your lot. He's in the next lot over.
That only proves my point, because there are 6 lots there. There are 6
And the
grave
4
sites.
graves,
Yes,
and 2 that aren't available.
well, they're not available if they're, well,
Because
if you
of
look
all.
at this, if you look at this map, you'll see something else there. Not to change the subject, but that road went in there after the Johnsons, the elder Johnsons were buried. And before they were buried, there was no road there. And after they were buried, as far as we understand it, there was no road there. That road covered one of those 6 grave sites, as we understand it,
If you go,
leaving only 1 grave site to their south rather than 2.
I took a picture from behind those graves, and you can see where those 2 graves are by the road. Behind them, or in front of them, are 2 graves where those ones would be. So there is room for 2 graves next to your family where there
Wait, hold
would
it,
have
hold
been.
it.
This is the tree, this is coming from the other direction.
I understand that,
Okay.
I understand that, but the problem is, do you know where the southern edge of the Johnson grave site is? How far it is from the road? The point is that unless you got the Johnsons, the 2 elder Johnsons, buried in such a location that the headstone is to the far south of the gravesite, that is equal with the southern edge of the gravesite, there's only 56 inches between that gravesite and the road.
And I believe that the vault has turned at that point, and that's where 90 degrees, and it would be off the measurement of being,
Well, first off, if there was
East to
room,
west.
if there was room, we wouldn't be having this
Right,
conversation.
that's why we had the
There
excavator.
is-
go
Right,
out
that's
to
why we
the
had the
road.
ex,
There is room. You've got Albert and Cleo Johnson in 2 graves. Then you've got 2 more graves with Bruce and Charlotte. That's 4. There must be 2 more somewhere.
They are, on the side by the road are the 2 that you can't use because of the roots and the vaults. So two of your
Okay.
graves were eaten by a tree,
Okay.
basically.
Here are the problems. First of all, there's an assumption in your statement as to where the southern edge of Albert and Cleo's graves are in relation to the road. And when we looked at it, we made the very logical assumption, and I think it's correct, that that headstone, the center of the headstone, sits at the dividing point between Albert and Cleo's graves. Which means that one of those two graves goes 46 inches southward from the center line of that headstone. And if you go that distance, 46 inches southward from the center line of the headstone, and make your mark there, then measure the distance from that point to the road, it's only 56 inches.
We didn't
Now-
make any assumptions, by the way. We did have our excavator go out and rot it, and his opinion was that you cannot put another full burial in that lot.
Because of what?
Because he rotted it, because there's no room between the roots and the bulbs. That side is done.
Okay, well, the problem with what you're saying is this. 100 years ago, this township made a commitment to the Johnson family that they would have 6 grave sites together in that location.
And 5 years ago, your family made a commitment that
No
the two
commitment.
elders would be cremated and put on those graves.
No, they did not make a commitment to that effect.
That is
That is
what
what
the
they
record
thought.
shows.
Well, your record may show that, but they never made a firm commitment. And the fact of the matter is that they never said that they were giving up the grave sites. And the fact of the matter is that the fact that they would have those grave sites allow them to do what anyone who handles burials out there knows, that up until the time of death, a person's desires as to what are to be done with his mortal remains can change. And the fact that they had those grave sites means that they had the freedom and the right to make that change.
And they can change, but that doesn't mean that their option is still available, because there was a decision made that this tree is in the way. If you would like to still remain in this spot, we can do a cremation. And when you came back and said they decided they don't want to be cremated, the previous clerk made special exceptional room so that they can stay by the family. Just so happens one is on the left side of your family lot and one is in front of that grave.
The problem with everything you've said is that it all comes back to the tree roots. If the tree roots hadn't been there, none of this would be happening. Now, here's the problem. Whose tree roots are they? They don't belong to the Johnsons. They weren't responsible
They
for
might
many
belong to the
of this.
Johnsons if that tree was there when they picked up those graves. It looks
No.
great having a tree on your grave site until it grows up like a big boy.
Who is responsible for managing the cemetery?
Oh.
The people buried there? Their families? No. You own the cemetery. You're responsible for the management of the cemetery. You made a commitment. And when you make a commitment that there are going to be 6 grave sites here, or 10 grave sites here, or whatever, it's simply a question of integrity that you're going to honor the commitment.
And
People
how-
rely on
How do you
that.
fix it? How do we fix it?
That you,
In that spot.
There's
Barry?
2 people in those spots. You have
no,
2
there's no one in those spots.
Not in those spots by the road. We can't do nothing about those
No, we're
spots.
not talking
We're
about
not
that.
talking about that, we're talking about the distance, we're talking about the space between the northern edge of Albert and Cleo Johnson's gravesite.
Sure.
Charlotte's?
Bruce.
Go from
Where's
this,
Charlotte?
okay, that, we're talking about this,
Charlotte.
this space,
Bruce.
from this
My
line
father,
here
between,
to this line here. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
yeah, the room is here.
There's one
The room
right
is here.
there.
The room is here. My dad's here.
This
Here.
distance here
I'm
to
over
here is the equivalent of
Bruce
3
is here.
grave sites.
The
Charlotte
only
is
thing I
here.
can
My
tell
grandparents are
you,
there.
to save as much integrity as you're saying that you don't have. and
I'm not saying you don't have
No,
integrity.
Is this, I would like Rob to come out and re-rot it, and that will make the final decision.
And I love it. And you can.
We'll have him come out and re-rot it, and if there's room, we have no problem. If there is, then the option we have is what we've given you, but we'll check it
I will
again.
just say, sir, that I believe, I've read the detail, I've gone over it with Deanna, and I believe that the township has honored their commitment to your family. We've made 2 options. I think we've got, when your mother passes, we have her as close as we can possibly get it. And I'm confident with what Deanna recommended to you, that is what your options would be.
The problem is, that was not the commitment made. The commitment was not that when she passes, well, there will be these options. You can be buried at your husband's feet, or you can be cremated and put here, or you can be buried over there, or out in the North 40, or whatever.
Unfortunately, things change in the cemetery. Deanna lives it several times a week, and I believe that you've been offered what is fair and equitable, as much as we can do. You know, I'm really confident of voting on this right now myself.
Well, the problem that we have is that the commitment which was made was not that there would be options. The commitment that was made was 6 grave sites. And you folks are the one who manage that tree. It's your tree.
That tree was long before us.
Yes,
but-
it was.
Well, when you acquired the cemetery, you acquired the tree. I mean, how long has the township owned that cemetery?
It's been back in 1800.
Okay, the point is that when you got the cemetery, you've got responsibility for the tree.
We do have responsibilities, and I believe that we do everything we can to manage what we have. I'll actually make a motion that we approve the offer that Deanna made to you.
Well, we don't even know what that offer is right now,
It's the,
because we've gotten multiple offers.
We've
One
got-
was to bury Charlene somewhere else, one was to bury her at Bob's feet, one was to have her cremated and buried on top of him. We don't even know what the offer is right
Any of
now.
those
right
options,
here, options.
any of those are your 3 options.
Well, you
The
said,
other was to
Well, we can't
send my
accept them
father.
because,
you said you didn't want cremation, so the next option closest to him is at his feet.
Yes.
Yes.
And
The
these,
next-
these places would not even be available had someone else been buried there, because they're actually next to other.
Other
Your
plots.
lots.
Right,
But-
and they just happened to be available, and they gave you the option, and
There's
we-
space, so it.
a 100-year-old tree has kind of messed things up.
well,
there's no- and
let me
there's-
put it this way.
The
It
time
doesn't
that
have to
we,
continue to mess things up. It can, the roots can be cut and to allow a bulb.
when we take on a tree, bring it down, whatever, it's when it's dying and
Yeah.
it threatens to ruin, headstones, especially the tall ones, it could knock them over, break them, whatever. That's when we intervene on trees. We do not start digging up roots, because it can interfere with the bulb on either side of it, because of having to do so much digging and loosen up anything that might be near it.
Well, the problem with what you're saying, ma'am, is that not doing anything with the tree has created this problem. It has shoved 2 vaults, 90
You
degrees.
can't cut every tree down.
We're not asking you to cut it down. The fact of the matter is, though, that you can dig the grave and simply sever a section of the roots in that grave without harming the tree.
Deanna, would that be extra expense?
Well, the
I'm not
problem
worried
is,
about that.
that's not, it would definitely be extra expense, but that is not even the problem, because Rob said the vaults are turned. So we don't know that that's just vaults, is that just tree? It's more than just a couple roots. It's probably a whole mess under there.
The
It's a
problem-
giant tree.
There are no vaults
In proximity.
in proximity to that site.
Correct.
But there's still remains.
The 2 children, Bruce and Charlotte, are not in vaults. And the fact of the matter is that Charlene Bailey, as the eldest surviving heir of the Johnsons, has inherited what was granted to her, and she is also the oldest surviving sibling of Bruce and Charlotte. And as we look at this thing, with no vaults in their graves, there's not any problem with vaults. I mean, the
But
2
there's
vaults,
problems with remains.
she wouldn't even have to touch the remains. These are children. If they're buried in the center of those 2 graves, then you don't have to interfere with their remains in order to bury Charlene there.
How many is it? 46 inches?
It's 46 inches.
And that's enough.
And we know from the measurement
vault.
we took that there's at least 43 inches available without touching another vault. I mean, there's
If
more
there
than
was
that.
one.
Because
If
there
there
are no
was a
vaults
vault.
there. There are simply no vaults there. The
It's the roots
The remains would be undisturbed,
Roots only.
and the vaults are 3 grave sites away. Even if they've been turned 90 degrees, they don't come anywhere close to where we're suggesting Shar can be buried. Nowhere close. And, you know, to simply stick a rod down there and come up with an opinion, when you've got a commitment that she could be buried there, not somewhere else, not at the foot of her husband. I mean,
I know this is tough for you and it's tough for us too. It really is.
well, at the very least, I'd ask that you have him go out there and take another look at that area next to Bob's grave.
Would you accept that as final if it doesn't work?
I don't know what I'll accept or what my wife will accept. The only thing I know is that one of us is going to have to either lie to Charlene for the rest of her life or tell her that her wish to be buried next to her husband is going to be denied. We'll have to make that choice. I mean, that's what we're being pushed toward right now. We either have to lie to her for the rest of her life and then break a promise to her, or we have to tell her that, oh, sorry, Shar, you can't be buried side by side with your husband. You went through life side by side, you want to lie side by side, but you can't do it. So I can't tell you what we would accept or not accept, because that's what we'd have to choose.
I'd like to support Carol's motion at this time.
Okay.
Have it read it? You wanna read it?
No, that's what Carol.
No, my motion is that we accept what
Three
Deanna's
options.
proposal was, and the family can decide. I think it's just time to, get this resolved.
So we have a motion and we have support. Any discussion from the board? All those in favor of the motion signify with aye. Aye. Nays, nay. Motion carries. 3 options we have at this point. Sorry, I didn't know the way you wanted. Okay, item 9 this evening is resolution 19-156 to accept for first reading the zoning map ordinance amendment for the rezoning of 3902, 16, 426, 014 from I2 to R1. This will be a roll call vote. Can we get a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Supported. Motion's been made and supported. Any discussion from the board? Hearing none, Mr. Belitstra?
Yes.
Mr. Frederick?
Yes.
Mrs. Jansen?
Yes.
Mr. Sorensen, yes. Ms. Tahan?
Yes.
Mr. Scheidel?
Yeah.
Ms. Bicycle?
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 10 is resolution -19-155, first reading introduction of the sewer ordinance amendment. This will also be by roll call vote. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, we have support? Motion been made and supported. Any discussion from the board? Yes, it was.
Did it look familiar?
Okay, hearing none. Ms. Bicycle?
Yes.
Mr. Scheidel?
Yeah.
Ms. Tahan?
Yes.
Mr. Sorensen, yes. Mrs. Jansen?
Yes.
Mr. Frederick? Yes. And Mr. Belitstra?
Yeah.
Motion carries. Item 11 this evening is resolution number 19-154. It updates our fee schedule as well, or what it is. This will also be by roll call vote. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Support.
Moved and supported. Any board discussion?
Is this pretty similar to what it was each time, Jeff?
Yes, it is. It just, there was a number that was transposed on the other one, that's why we're redoing it. So, Mr. Belitstra?
Yes.
Mr. Frederick?
Yes.
Mrs. Jansen?
Yes.
Mr. Sorensen, yes. Ms. Tahan?
Yes.
Mr. Scheidel?
Yes.
Ms. Bicycle?
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 12 is to accept for information, or if there's any questions or discussion on our first quarter 19-20 fiscal year budget report. If there's no questions, entertain a motion to approve it for information.
So moved.
Board.
Moved and supported. All in favor of the motion signify with aye.
Aye.
Nays, nay. Motion carries. Item 13 on our agenda this evening is discussion of the draft communication services facilities policy. And this has a lot to do with small cell and all the stuff that's going in the road right away. We have, after the meeting they had at the road commission to discuss this draft, there's gonna be 5 townships, including myself, getting together to look at a suitable ordinance that we can all craft together that will work for best as we can for the township. MTA's been really involved with this, and when I was in DC, when we were there for National Towns and Township, that was a big discussion with our Washington legislators as well. So this is something that's coming that we're gonna try and make it the best it can be for continuing to have control of our right of ways.
Does this go along with that, rumor or whatever that we heard about the,
Telecommunications, the franchise agreement.
Right, right.
Yes, that's all part of it.
all part of that, okay.
So, I mean, that's, you know, it's a lot of reading, and I read it over again today, but I mean, you can read it over twice, and doesn't always read
Yeah.
the same way twice,
It's
so.
a little legalese.
But, Go ahead.
Is this pretty standard for all around the country then?
it's going to be a little more standard, yes, but,
Yeah.
but right now, we're working just in the state of Michigan on it, so. But we wanna read, I know Jim Porter has done some, for Oshkosh Township, has done a lot of research, and he actually gave a presentation to our MTA chapter, back at the last MTA evening meeting we had, and, I'll get you more of that information, so we'll probably be ongoing discussion and on the,
This comes from the road commission?
that sample policy is for them and their right of ways, yes.
Are they gonna be willing to work with all of us?
Yes, actually, I think so, because they've been really having the communication with us, because they wanna work together with us on it, so,
Okay.
right now at least.
Well,
We'll see how it
especially
goes.
Fountain County, because we're all out county.
Right, exactly, so there'll be more to come on that. And, on our, I guess, if there's any more questions on that, we'll go down to appointing Stephanie Davis and James Miles as alternates to the ZBA.
So what we'll be appointing, Stephanie will go on as an alternate for a full term, so it would expire, August of 2022. And Jim would go on as an alternate, filling an existing seat to expire in November of 2021.
So moved.
Supported.
Moved and supported, all in favor of the motion, signify with aye. Aye. Nays, nay. Motion carries. Trustee comments. Fred,
No, I have nothing.
James.
So are we close on the Moran issue? I see that there was a check still drawing out on that. I would,
There just was another brief asking for an oral,
Or in the Court of Appeals.
oral argument. It's in the Court of Appeals, Michigan State Court of Appeals.
Should happen sometime the end of this month, first or next.
and then maybe put it behind this kind of thing,
Hope
is
so.
the mic open? Okay, because I know we have the best legal minds out there on this, I just can't believe that
Yeah.
we're still paying what we're paying, something that was cut and dried.
We just have to carry it forward now.
Okay.
See, the Court of Appeals hopefully will have a better understanding of zoning law than the circuit court judge.
And then one other thing, the roads issue, there's a meeting tomorrow, Matt Hall is hosting a meeting in Marshall. It's from 10 to 11 tomorrow, and it's discuss, road funding before they start working on the budget. And